I skipped my dream internship to care for my grandfather so my uncle could keep his job abroad. At the will reading, my uncle said loudly, "Well, it's only fair I get the house. I'm the only one who built a life." The lawyer looked at me, then read the final clause aloud. "To the grandchild who showed me loyalty when I couldn't speak. You inherit everything." My uncle turned pale, and then he lunged across the table. This all started 3 years ago when I was 22 and fresh out of college. I just landed a design internship in Chicago. It was with a small but respected architecture firm. The kind of place where people pulled 80-hour weeks and loved it. I was thrilled. It was unpaid, but I didn't care. I had been working part-time at a coffee shop and saving everything. This was supposed to be my shot. My whole plan revolved around it. Then my mom called. "Your grandpa had a stroke," she said. "He's in the hospital." She didn't cry. She wasn't the crying type. But I could hear the edge in her voice. My grandfather, Harold, had raised me for most of my childhood. My dad left before I turned 5. My mom was always moving from boyfriend to boyfriend, state to state. Grandpa was the one steady thing in my life. The man who taught me how to drive, who came to every school play, who fixed my first car when I blew out the clutch trying to impress a girl. The doctors said the stroke had paralyzed his right side. He couldn't speak. Couldn't swallow on his own. He'd need round-the-clock care. I asked, "Who's helping him now?" She hesitated. "Well, no one. He's still in the hospital. But he'll be discharged in a week. They said someone needs to be with him full-time." I asked about my uncle Greg. He was Grandpa's only son. Lived in Berlin, worked for a tech company, always posting photos on Instagram of fancy food and rooftop parties. "He says he can't come," Mom said. "His job is too important. If he leaves, they might not let him back in." So that was it. It was either me or no one. I thought about it for 3 nights. 3 sleepless, gut-wrenching nights. I had worked so hard for that internship. I had everything lined up. But I couldn't let Grandpa rot in a nursing home. Not after what he'd done for me. I called the firm and told them I had a family emergency. They were kind about it, but I knew I'd never get another shot there. I moved into Grandpa's house in Lafayette. A small brick place with ivy growing up one side. It smelled like old wood and something sweet I could never place. Maybe pipe smoke. Maybe memories. The first few weeks were chaos. He couldn't talk. Just grunted and groaned. Sometimes he'd get frustrated and cry. Other times he'd just stare at the TV, unblinking, for hours. We had visiting nurses for the medical stuff, but the day-to-day was on me. Feeding him through a tube, cleaning up accidents, bathing him, repositioning him every 2 hours so he wouldn't get bed sores, changing sheets at 3 a.m. There were days I didn't leave the house. I didn't go out with friends. Didn't date. Didn't even answer texts. Greg? He called maybe once a month. 5 minutes, tops. "Hey, just checking in. How's the old man doing?" "He's still alive, Greg." "Cool. Let me know if he takes a turn." That was it. No money. No visits. Just an occasional call to make himself feel involved. My mom sent a birthday card once. That was the extent of her help. But Grandpa and I found a rhythm. I learned to read his facial expressions. He couldn't talk, but he'd raise his eyebrows if I asked a yes or no question. He'd tap his fingers to get my attention. I talked to him constantly, even if he couldn't answer. One night I was watching a rerun of Jeopardy and said, "God, I wish you could still yell answers at the TV." He smiled. It was small, crooked, but it was real. That kept me going. He died quietly on a cold March morning. I was holding his hand when it happened. Just me. No one else. I called Greg. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail. He texted back 4 hours later. "Sorry to hear. I'll fly in for the will reading." That was all he said. We met at a law office downtown. It was small, cramped, smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. The lawyer, Mr. Daly, looked like a man who hated small talk. Greg strolled in wearing a blazer and loafers, tan like he'd just come from vacation. He looked around the office with this smug little grin, like none of it mattered to him. We sat at the table. Greg, me, and 2 of our cousins, Danny and Reese, who hadn't visited Grandpa once since he got sick. Daly read through the will. Most of it was simple. A few personal items to the cousins. Grandpa's war medals to Reese, his old watch to Danny. Then Daly paused and looked up. Greg leaned forward. "Here we go," he muttered. "Let's just be honest, it's only fair I get the house. I'm the only one who built a life." I stared at him. My heart was pounding. He didn't even look at me when he said it. Daly looked at me, then back at the will. He cleared his throat. "To the grandchild who showed me loyalty when I couldn't speak, you inherit everything. The house, the savings, the land, all of it." Greg's face turned gray. "What?" he snapped. Daly repeated it. "Everything goes to your niece." Greg's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then suddenly, he slammed his hand on the table and lunged. He reached across the table like he was going to grab me by the collar. His face was red, wild. I jumped back in my seat. "You little shit," he shouted. "You think you deserve it? You gave up nothing. You trapped him. You manipulated him." Daly stood up, shocked. The cousins froze. I stood too, heart racing. "You abandoned him, Greg. You were too busy partying in Berlin to even call." He looked like he was about to hit me. But Daly stepped between us and said, "I will call the police if you don't sit down right now." Greg didn't sit. He just stood there, breathing heavy, eyes locked on me like he couldn't believe what just happened. His hands were shaking, not from grief, but from rage. Pure, ugly rage. Then he laughed. Short and bitter. "This is bullshit," he said. He was senile. He couldn't even wipe his own ass. Daly didn't flinch. "Mr. Palmer," he said, firm, quiet. "Your father was of sound mind when this will was signed. We have 2 medical evaluations and a video of him confirming his wishes." Greg turned to me. "You planned this, didn't you? You took advantage of a sick old man. You kept me out of the loop and made yourself his little nurse so you could play the hero." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the truth in his face. But I was shaking too. "You weren't here," I said finally. "You didn't see what it was like. You don't get to act like a victim now." He snorted. "You think you earned that house? What do you know about bills? About property tax? About anything? You're just a loser who never left Indiana." That one stung. But I didn't back down. "You're right," I said. "I didn't leave. Because someone had to stay." Greg stormed out after that. Slammed the door so hard the receptionist screamed. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Certified. From Greg's attorney. He was contesting the will. He claimed Grandpa wasn't mentally competent when he signed it. Said I manipulated him. Accused me of elder abuse. I was stunned. I called Daly. He said not to panic, but I could tell even he was surprised. "This is going to get ugly," he said. He was right. Over the next 2 months, Greg dragged me through hell. He filed for a formal hearing. Claimed Grandpa's will was invalid due to undue influence. Hired a private investigator. Started digging through my social media, looking for anything he could twist. He told my cousins I forged the will. He went to the local paper anonymously and submitted a tip that I was exploiting a vulnerable senior for financial gain. My boss at the cafe pulled me aside one morning and said, "Hey, is any of that stuff in the paper about you true?" It was humiliating. Worse, he was winning people over. He knew how to talk, how to twist the story. He made me look like a greedy leech who took advantage of a dying man. Even some of my friends started pulling away. I tried to stay quiet, let the lawyer handle it. But then Greg did something I never expected. He showed up at the house. It was just after 9 p.m. I had just finished doing dishes. The knock on the door was loud. Sharp. I opened it without thinking. He stood there on the porch in a coat, holding a manila envelope. "We need to talk," he said. I started to close the door. "Wait," he said. "I'm serious. I came to offer you a deal." I didn't want to let him in, but part of me was curious. He walked in like he still owned the place. Sat at the kitchen table like he'd been there yesterday. He slid the envelope across the table. "I'll drop the lawsuit. All of it. If you agree to sell the house and split the money with me 50-50. I stared at him. "You're joking. You want to spend your life tied to this place," he said. "It's a dump. It needs repairs. Taxes are going to bleed you dry. You can't afford it." "You mean like Grandpa couldn't afford a caretaker because you didn't send a damn dime?" He ignored that. "You take the deal, I walk away. No court. No headlines. You get a fresh start. You can even go to Chicago or wherever. This house isn't worth it. I looked at the table, then at him. And for a second I felt it. The temptation. But then I thought about Grandpa. About him crying during therapy. About how he'd smile when I read to him. About how he looked at me the day he died. No, I said. This house is worth it. Because I earned it. And I'm not giving you a single damn brick. Greg stared at me, his jaw tight. Then he stood and knocked over the chair behind him. You're going to regret this. And he walked out. 2 days after Greg stormed out of the house, I came home from my shift at the cafe and noticed the front door was slightly open. I froze. I live alone. I never leave it open. I stepped inside slowly, heart pounding. The kitchen drawers were pulled out. Grandpa's old photo albums gone. The safe where he kept his VA papers was open and empty. I checked the back room. The locked cabinet where I kept the will paperwork and video proof busted. The USB stick with the video of Grandpa signing the will? Gone. I called the police. They came, took a report, asked if I had enemies. I gave them Greg's name, but they didn't find fingerprints or anything solid. The officer said something about civil family disputes being tricky and left it at that. Daly, my lawyer, was furious when I told him. That video was our insurance, he said. He's trying to erase evidence. I didn't have a backup. That was the only copy. I'd been so careful. So sure it was safe in the locked cabinet. I started to feel paranoid. Every time I came home, I'd check every window, every lock. I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to the bed. My anxiety was through the roof. Then things got worse. One morning I walked outside to head to work, and my car wouldn't start. I popped the hood and found the spark plug wires cut clean. That same week, I got a call from Child Protective Services. Are you caring for a dependent elder? The woman asked. What? No. My grandfather passed away months ago. Well, we received a report that you were keeping a senior confined against their will. I nearly threw the phone. Greg had filed a fake report. Again, he was trying to drown me in legal threats and bureaucracy. To make me look unstable or dangerous. Then, out of nowhere, Reese, my cousin, called me. I hadn't talked to her since the will reading. Can we meet? She asked. It's about Greg. We met at a diner just off Sagamore Parkway. She looked nervous, as darting around like someone was following her. Greg called me last week, she said. He offered me money to testify that you forged the will. I sat there stunned. He said if I swore you coerced Grandpa, he'd cut me in when he got the house sold. I told him to go to hell, but I thought you should know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I knew Greg would keep pushing. He had money, connections, nothing to lose. But I had something he didn't know about. 3 months before Grandpa died, a hospice nurse named Arlene had visited regularly. Older woman, sharp as hell. She and Grandpa had bonded. She knew the truth. How I stayed up all night to care for him. How he cried when I rubbed lotion on his swollen feet. How I read him the news every morning. I tracked her down through the care agency. When I showed up at her place, she hugged me. She didn't even need me to explain. I figured something like this might happen, she said. So I took a few notes during my shifts. Even recorded a few voice memos. For myself, really. But I think they might help you. She gave me a flash drive and a small notebook. Inside were her daily logs. Times, dates, even little quotes from Grandpa's therapy sessions. She'd written things like, Harold cried when Opie fed him mashed peaches today. Whispered, I owe her my life. One entry hit me hard, Greg hasn't called in weeks. Harold mouthed selfish when I asked about him. He seems ashamed of his son. The recordings were even better. She talked to herself during her shift sometimes, and in the background you could hear Grandpa grunting in response or tapping once for yes, twice for no. In one file, she asked, Do you want your granddaughter to have the house? And there were 3 firm taps. No hesitation. This was gold. Daly reviewed it all. It's not as ironclad as a video, but it's strong. Very strong. We filed the recordings and logs into the court record. The next hearing was in 2 weeks. The night before the court date, I found a dead rat nailed to my back door. Its eyes were missing. No note, just the rat. I knew who did it, but I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just picked it up, wrapped it in a trash bag, and went inside. Greg was trying to scare me, break me down before I could testify. But I'd made it through 3 years of hell. Through loneliness, fear, exhaustion, and watching the strongest man I ever knew fade away. Greg could throw whatever he wanted at me. I wasn't backing down. The court date came on a rainy Monday morning in June. Gray skies, roads slick. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and mildew. My palms were sweating as I sat beside Daly, clutching Arlene's notebook like a lifeline. Greg walked in wearing another smug grin and a tailored suit. His lawyer, some hotshot from Indy, gave me a little nod, like we were about to play chess. I just stared ahead. No smiles. No games. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s. Sharp eyes. Didn't like delays. She gave Greg's side 1 hour to present their case. They came in swinging. Claimed Grandpa wasn't mentally fit. Claimed I isolated him from his family. Said I had suspicious influence over an old man who couldn't speak for himself. They even brought in a distant cousin who said I once refused to let her visit Grandpa, something that only happened once when he had a medical emergency and couldn't be disturbed. Greg spoke last. My father was manipulated, he said. He was sick. He wasn't himself. He would have wanted his children to inherit his legacy, not someone who had no experience, no job, and no direction in life. I didn't look at him. I just waited. When it was our turn, Daly started with the legal documents. Then came the medical reports. Then Arlene's logs. Then, finally, the recordings. The judge leaned in when Daly played the part where Arlene asked Grandpa if I should get the house, and he tapped 3 times. The courtroom was dead quiet. Even Greg's lawyer looked rattled. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood up. My voice shook at first, but I didn't stop. I didn't ask for any of this, I said. I gave up my internship, my friends, my whole future to take care of him. I cleaned him. I fed him. I held his hand every night. Greg didn't come once. Not one visit in 3 years. I paused, looked Greg dead in the eye. And now he wants to take the only thing I have left of him. Greg stood up. She's lying. The judge slammed her gavel. Sit down, Mr. Palmer. He sat, fuming. The judge took a recess. We waited in silence. Greg wouldn't even look at me now. Just stared at the table, jaw tight, bouncing one knee like a bomb ticking down. When the judge returned, she didn't drag it out. The will is valid. The evidence clearly shows that the deceased made his intentions known, repeatedly and with witnesses. This court sides with the beneficiary, the granddaughter. It was over. Just like that, Greg stood, grabbed his briefcase, and stormed out of the room without another word. His lawyer followed him out. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just sat there, breathing. For the first time in months, I felt still. But Greg didn't let it go. 2 nights later, I woke to the smell of smoke. The side of the house was on fire. Neighbors saw it first and called 911. The firefighters said it looked like someone doused the back porch with gasoline and tossed a match. The security camera I installed a week earlier, hidden behind the old wind chime, caught everything. It was Greg. Clear as day. He was arrested the next morning. They found the gas can and gloves in the trunk of his rental car. Charged him with arson, attempted insurance fraud. He stupidly listed the property as his on a fake document, and reckless endangerment. He pled not guilty. Didn't matter. The video sealed his fate. He got 5 years. I was there at sentencing. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up again. I looked Greg in the eye one last time. You said I trapped Grandpa. That I didn't build a life. But I was there when it mattered. You ran away. And now you're right where you belong. It took months to rebuild the porch. Insurance covered most of it. A local handyman helped with the rest. I went back to the design firm. They offered me a new internship after hearing about what happened. The story had made local news. I accepted but kept the house. I commute now. I fixed up Grandpa's study and work from there when I can. I planted roses in the backyard where the fire reached the edge of the grass but didn't take everything. They're blooming now. Bright red. Just like Grandpa loved.